Okay, so this is the second video in the second part of the 2013 state exam. Last time we left off with question 59, so we're going to start at question 60. And again, I'd like you to keep track of your points. At the end, I'm going to ask you to tally up all the points and then turn in your work to Mr. Bape when we get to that point. So anyway, here we have a Punnett square, and most students are usually pretty good with these. So here we're going to have capital B, then we're going to have capital lowercase. You just match it up side to side and up and down. Here I've got capital B, and capital B, lowercase b. If you filled in your Punnett square like that, you get a point. And again, keep track of your points. Here, this one is going to be lowercase b, and again, lowercase b and lowercase b. It's asking for the genetic makeup of two parent rabbits whose offspring can only have white fur. If the offspring can only have white fur, they both have to have recessive genes for that. Okay, so that's going to be 1 point there. And I know you spent a lot of time on Punnett squares last year. Here we've got beetles, and for this question, they're looking for an answer, something about beetle A or color A is better camouflaged. And you didn't have to use the word camouflage. You could have said something like they're better adapted to their environment. You could say they have a better chance of living to reproduce. Beetles with color A are less likely to be eaten by predators. Body color B is more easily seen by predators. The trees have light-colored bark. All of those things would have been acceptable answers for number 62. And again, the points are over here, so that's worth a point. And keep track of your points as we go along. If you miss something, just go back to it in the video. For 63, you get 1 point for two responses. And it's asking you which animal in the chart undergoes internal fertilization. That would be similar to like a human. And well, one of the acceptable answers would be human. The fertilization takes place inside of the organism. The human, and the other answer would be the bird. And with these other creatures like the frog and things like that, the fertilization happens outside of the organism. For 64, which animals in the chart develop externally? That one you could have put bird and frog. For these, the order doesn't make a difference. You could have them be in either order, and that would be 63 and 64. Okay, for 65, why do human egg and sperm cells only have 23 chromosomes when human body cells have 46? Well, you get half of your chromosomes from your mother and the other half from your father. So a human gets half the chromosomes from each parent, totaling 46. Okay, let's move on. So that's 65. Okay, here we've got 66. The energy source, the source of all this energy for photosynthesis would be sunlight, or you could say sun, or you could just say light. Anything like that is fine. For 67, state one way the plant uses the sugar that is produced in the leaves. It's going to use the sugar for its life processes, things like growth, things like repair. The plant gets damaged. Maybe flowers. All of these different things. An unacceptable response would be photosynthesis, because the photosynthesis is producing the sugar. It's not using the sugar. So photosynthesis would not be okay. 66 and 67 are both worth a point. Most of these questions are worth 1 point. Occasionally there's a 2-point question. So that's 67. 68, we have a line graph showing the population of moose and of wolves. And when we look at these predator-prey relationships, we usually see them crisscrossing each other a lot. So if the population of wolves is high, then the population of moose is going to go down. If the population of moose is high, that means there are fewer wolves around. And we see this pattern continue. The population of wolves increases, so then the population of moose drop. When the population of moose drop, there's not enough food for the wolves, so then the population of the wolves starts to decline, so then the population of the moose has a chance to recover. This is a very common pattern that's seen in predator-prey relationships. Anyway, it's asking you about the pattern and to compare it from 1965 to 1970 and then 1970 to 1975. And for this question, in 1965 to 1970, there was a decrease. You could always say went down, or you just have to indicate a decline or a drop. You don't have to necessarily use the word decrease, although it's certainly good if you did. You could say drop or decline or just went down, something like that. And then from 1970 to 1975, we had an increase. And again, you could say something like it went up, right? It goes up, something like that. For 69, it's asking you to explain how the graph shows that there is a predator-prey relationship between the wolves and moose on this island. Because that was something I was just talking about. When there are more wolves, there are fewer moose. And I'm not writing out full responses. On the actual exam, you need to. I'm just kind of writing down some notes and key ideas. This is the concept that your answer should include. This is the concept that your answer should have in it. Okay, so let's move on. Now we're up to 70. And which labeled city has the greatest risk of damage from an earthquake occurring along the San Andreas Fault? So we find the San Andreas Fault. It's over here. And we find a city that's closest to the San Andreas Fault. And if we look at the San Andreas Fault, this is where an earthquake would occur. San Francisco is very close to that line. Okay, so we're going to add San Francisco. Okay, so that would be the point there for San Francisco. 71, one action other than moving to another location that people living in California can take to prepare for a future earthquake. There's a lot of answers you could put here. You could reinforce buildings, make better buildings. You could have an evacuation plan. You can have emergency supplies. You can have extra food and water, first aid equipment, things like that. Any one of those, you only needed one, any kind of emergency supplies, food, water, you only needed one answer, and any of those work. Okay, 72, here we have a map. Sometimes students have a little trouble with these maps. This map is showing precipitation, basically rainfall, for New York State. And the lines indicate areas of equal precipitation. So anywhere along this line had a rainfall amount or a precipitation amount of 48 inches. And it says, which labeled region receives the highest average yearly precipitation? So for this, we have our highest rainfalls over here, where it's labeled Catskills. There's 60, that's the highest amount on the map. Okay, so that's going to be Catskills. That's the mountain range closest to us. And then it says, what is the average yearly precipitation for the city of Syracuse? So now I find Syracuse on here. Syracuse is up here. 36 is there. 40 is there. So I know it's got to be between those values. So for that reason, your number has to be between 36 and 40, but not including 36 and 40, which means that your answer could be 37, could be 38, could be 39. Okay, so those are your three choices. Any one of those would have worked. But if you said 36 or 40, that doesn't really make sense, because this is where 36 would be, and this is where 40 would be. They're not where Syracuse is. So it should be 37, 38, or 39. And again, all of these are worth 1 point. Okay, here we've got some weather maps. We spent some time talking about weather maps earlier in the winter. And it says, explain why the air mass over zone A, so zone A is over here, is colder and drier than the air mass over zone B. And there's a few things you could say here for this one. You could say that zone A is behind the cold front. We always have cold air behind a cold front and warmer air in front. You could also say that this is air that formed further north away from the ocean. So you could say something like air mass is to the north over land. We know it's dry because it's not over the water, and it's relatively north, far north. This is probably your easiest answer, though. It's behind the cold front, and that would be the answer to 1. And then it says, in which compass direction will the center of the low pressure system move, likely move during the next 24 hours? So here's the center of our low pressure. Remember, low pressure is associated with rain and snow and precipitation. Here we've got a warm front, there we have a cold front. It's in the legend here. And we talked about how storms typically move from the west towards the east in the United States. So for question 75, we could have an answer of east. You could also write down northeast, and that would be okay too. Sometimes these storms move to the northeast, but southeast is not okay. So it's got to be either east or northeast in order to get credit on that one. We don't have storms swoop down into Florida. They sometimes shift up to the north, but not down towards Florida. Okay, so that's 75. 76, one weather condition that would be occurring along the front. Well, the fronts bring storms. So you could just simply say storms. You could say rain. You could say snow. You could say clouds. Any kind of bad weather would be an okay answer. And that's worth 1 point there. Yeah, we're almost done. And I might have to make one more video that's really short. You know, and I think I might do that. I think I might stop here and then just make one really